Welcome to People First Builders, celebrating leaders in construction who build success through their people. My name is Fletcher Wimbush, your host. I'm the CEO of Discover.ai, a performance hiring software helping small and mid-sized AEC companies solve their hardest problem, people. We help people first leaders install and execute repeatable talent acquisition systems that drive business results by hiring top performers, lowering turnover, and building world-class company cultures. Stick around to the end and you can learn more about how to become a guest on our podcast and share your story with the world. Welcome to the People First Builders podcast. My name is Fletcher Wimbush, your host. Today, I have Mike Frick with me. He's with Bear Ironworks. He is the president and seasoned expert in the construction, agricultural, industrial fabrication space. He has long roots in the rural road building, oil field construction space. Mike's experience expands from welding and heavy equipment operations to managing over $200 million mega projects, including a $6 billion LNG factory. That's amazing. Big project. He founded Bear Ironworks in 2014, which now manufactures high quality rock screens and offers custom fabrication services for the mining and agricultural and oil and gas industries. I think it started as a side project. It sounds like you were out there as a project manager or superintendent working these big projects. What inspired this little, hobby, which is now a business?
Yeah. Thanks for that. So it's kind of a little bit of a story there. So I had a construction business and I used to make these rock screens myself. And so no one ever made one. They're also called a Grizzly. Yeah. But they're a rock screen. But so anyways, nobody ever made one for a skid steer. So back in the early 1900s is when they started making them, and they'd use old steam shovels to feed them and screen off rock. And so nobody had made one for a skid steer. So one day I built one and I sold it at a Ritchie Brothers auction. And then I had a bunch of iron left over from a project. So we was building some, and they put them on Craigslist and they sold well. I was able to teach my son how to weld through that. Nice. And so time he goes to college, he's going to college for a construction management degree at Colorado State University. And he's also a motorhead. He's a motocross kid. And he said, man, I need a garage for my motorcycle. And I said, you just should get a job too. He goes, there's no jobs. And I said, you know what? You should build those rock screens and sell them. Go find some farmer and ask him if you could use his shop or rent a shop or something, and which he did. And then he was building them, and he was really good at making a website. He's super good at that kind of stuff. So he made a website, and the next thing you know, it kind of blows up on him.
Wow.
Gets kicked out of the farmer's shop because of zoning laws in that area. And so he moves into the town of Fort Collins. He gets about a 6,000 square foot building,
proper facility.
Yep. And then he starts hiring his buddies in colleges, mechanical engineers and whatnot. And hey, man, you want to learn how to weld? And so he did.
Yeah. And
he was doing really well. And then his grades started falling, and he was too enthralled with the business and making good money. And meanwhile, I'm in Louisiana working on that LNG plant down there. And during COVID, I think I was one of the first people to catch COVID. As a matter of fact, I caught it right at the 1st of March.
Oh, wow.
2020. They didn't know what was wrong with me for sure. And I'm in a rural area. So the company I was working for said you had to quarantine. So I did. And meanwhile, just before that all happened, my father died. Oh, and my mom was left in Colorado by herself. My wife was here in Colorado by herself. And I'm down in Louisiana, going, what the heck am I doing quarantined in a camper trailer for 14 days? My mom's alone, my wife's alone.
Yeah.
And I go, it ain't worth it. My son, he was, by this time, he had got the business done and over with, and he finished his college, got his degree. And I called him up and I says, hey, I think I want to make those screens. What do you think?
He inspired you.
Yeah. And I says, I think we can do this. And he goes, yeah, let's do it. So he got a job for a little bit, working for a big construction company after college. And Then he moved to South Carolina, and he because his wife to be here pretty soon was going to law school there, so they had to move
Okay.
there. So he systemized the whole company from South Carolina,
Wow.
his college education and things that
Yeah.
all the cool new stuff all the younger guys know, all the younger
Yeah.
people know. And so he systemized the business. My wife got a job offer in Phoenix, so I live in Phoenix. He lives in South Carolina.
Wow.
We have the manufacturing business here in Grand Junction, Colorado.
Wow. So you guys are running a business remotely after
Yes.
all that said and done.
Yep.
And all of this started with solving a problem that you had in your own day-to-day work.
Right.
And then ultimately a problem your son had in terms of like being able to create financial freedom through to do the things he loves to do.
Yeah.
I love this. So, I mean, this is a true entrepreneurial story here, out there solving problems. Now, as you begin to scale a business like this, I mean, I think the first thing I want to highlight, your son went and hired all his friends and buddies from college. So like,
Right.
I think, most good businesses start in a garage or some random farmer's, shed, or whatever. And usually also start with like hiring your friends and families, which is, what we call in the hiring business, like the power of employee referrals, right? You hire people that are sort of a culture fit or that you trust, that you believe are, great people because you have these other relationships with them. And that's a great way to hire. At a certain point, though, your business begins to scale. I would imagine, have you guys outgrown the friends and family route? And what kind of experiences have you had in terms of getting people excited about this business? So, I mean, there's also this underlining theme I think going on in our society today is like, hey, how do we make blue collar jobs sexy again? How do we, reinvigorate people to go into the trades or into the construction industry, and get excited about this? And, college is not for everyone, right? And, we're really thinking about, bringing this type of worker back to the US. I mean, where are you at on all that?
Yeah. I mean, I had the opportunity to go to college if I wanted, but I didn't like to study.
Yeah. Well,
My
me
dad's
neither,
like, "Hey, man, I
but
really want to send you because no one in our families ever went to college." And so I said, I just want to go work. And that's what I want to do. And I did. I took a little bit of a technical school thing for welding,
yeah,
how to weld, which is really cool because you can go out as a welder and there's so many different avenues as a welder. You can be a pipe welder in the oil field, or you can be a fabricator, a specialty metal welder of some sort. But
underwater bridges. I mean, we see a lot of that. That's
yeah,
some pretty crazy stuff. I mean, you're a badass if you're doing that. You're like the Navy SEALs of welders if you're doing
yeah,
some of these types of
no,
work, right?
you're sewing with flame is how we say it.
Yeah.
So I remember, I think it was, gosh, what presidential debate it was. I think it was Marco Rubio the time before last when they was all running for president. And
Yeah.
he said something about welders, making good money. And then the next day, the welders were like, everybody's looking for welding jobs the next day.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of how I was in the construction business prior to this. And so my construction, I did heavy dirt work, and I used welding to complement the kind of work that I did. I actually closed old abandoned mines
Mm.
in Colorado, and that's what my stepson does now, and I help him do that also.
Okay.
So,
So you inspired two young people to go into the trades or into
Yep.
construction ultimately. What do you
Right.
think? What do you think? I mean, I don't want to be too presumptive about this question, but what do you think caught their attention?
So take my son, for instance. So I used to drag him along with me to go work, like I said, doing these old abandoned mines. It was like
Yeah.
you throw a 80-pound sack of concrete on your shoulder and walk up a mountain, or you're doing iron work, and it's just super heavy, labor intensive work.
Yeah.
And so I'd take him with shoveling a lot of shoveling.
Yeah.
And so I'd take him since he was like 4 years old, and he'd come out on the jobs with me. And I remember he would come out and cut iron for us and weld a little bit when he was like 9 years old. And
Yeah.
I remember one day he turned towards me and he says, "Man, I don't, it was hot outside." And he goes, "I don't want to do this." And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, get good grades, go get an education. You don't have to do this."
Yeah.
That's what he did. It stuck with him so hard.
Yeah.
He says, that's what I'm going to do. But he did. He could work. He knows how to work. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But
Well, he's ended up starting like a manufacturing business. That's not sexy, right?
Right. Yeah. And he was actually doing the work when it come by. He was fabricating it, putting it up, welding it. But he learned and, from me a little bit is like, hey, you can manage people, learn how to manage that part of it and give them what they need or whatever. And then on the other hand, my stepson, he likes to work. He was like me. He didn't want to go to college. He didn't want to work. That's not his thing.
He didn't mind the hard work.
He didn't mind the hard work. There's no doubt about it. So he goes out and does that and works hard at it. And he's been really successful at it. And he's a very people-oriented type person with his employees, I think, like me too.
Yeah.
Our company here.
So what does your stepson do? What kind of work is he in?
So he does heavy civil, like dirt work. He's got excavators, dozers, dump trucks.
Yeah. And he started as, out there with the shovel and then an equipment operator. And now he's running a crew or?
Yeah. He went with me to Louisiana as a laborer, and they found out that, and I said, I don't want him working under me.
Yeah.
Because I was, superintendent, ended up being the construction manager there. But so he worked and he was really good at it. And then the other bosses were like, hey, we need to make him a foreman. And he was saving his money because down there he's paying a lot of money. It's crazy.
Plus he gets per diem probably. And he's a young guy and they put you up, right? I imagine.
Right.
And,
Yeah, by the time he got his foreman, I think it was $34 an hour plus somewhere around $500 or $600 a week for per diem.
And overtime, I would assume too, right?
And all overtime. And he was one of the guys that were doing 80 hours a week.
Yeah. So he's pulling down like 150K and all that probably, And so that's, I think, one of the other things that I don't think that we do a good job of communicating to, especially young people, right? Hey, like how old was he? Was he
He was 20. Let me see here. He was about 24.
Yeah.
23.
No debt. He's 23. He's making more than most college grads, frankly, doing white collar jobs, like double, triple what they're making, right? He's making software engineering money, out there doing something that, it sounds like more naturally inclined towards like not studying or, liking to work with your hands. And I think there's a lot of young people that like that, right? And they've been convinced to go to college, rack up a bunch of debt, do something that they don't like doing. And when this other path is exponentially faster to a path of financial freedom, and it can take, and you have a lot of options. So you just laid them all out, right? I mean, you could stay as a trade and make a lot of money and do really interesting work and, go home every night and have a great life. You can quickly accelerate into leadership with no college degree. Or you can end up in that entrepreneurial path. And, one of the things I love about the AEC space is there are so many entrepreneurial businesses, building things in America, right? That oftentimes come from guys like you or your two sons, right? Who they went out there, they did the work, they learned how to weld, they learned how to operate the equipment, they shoveled the dirt. And as they accelerate in their career, they have that fundamental skill set and understanding of what it is like to do that job now that they're in the leadership roles, right? And such a great story, I think, that needs to be told. And so I like to tell that story on this podcast. And you can share this content with whoever you like, but post this. But I think we need to tell that story more and more often, right, to folks. In terms of your own people in your own company, how are you guys? Where are you guys at? How many folks do you have, and where? How are you going about making this building a people first culture within your business?
Yeah. So when I left Louisiana, I came back and restarted the Bear Iron Works after my son kind of closed it down. I didn't have a shop right off the bat. And nothing. And my dad. My mom was living by herself on some land.
Yeah.
And my dad had this old shop. It was literally 16 feet by 20 feet.
Wow. Okay.
It was not very big.
Yeah.
And so I had a little welder in there and I started building these things and I'm putting them up on Craigslist. And then pretty soon I'm thinking, this thing's going again. And then this is COVID. We're talking August of 2020.
Well, the building industry blew up during COVID.
Yeah. So I started getting these I just putting things on Craigslist and started blowing up and I'm shipping them. And then I hired a guy that, luckily for me at the time, and it kind of still holds true right now, is there in the area that we're in Western Colorado was big oil field.
Yeah.
And so the oil field kind of just went away. And so a lot of people moved with that industry or wherever there was jobs. There was a lot of them that had kids here and didn't want to move.
Yeah.
So I took advantage of that. So I got some really good welders here because of that. So we grew from that. We're in I think, 8,000, 9,000 square foot building now.
Okay.
And we have I think we have eight employees altogether. We bring on new products a lot, but we've got some really good experienced people here.
Yeah.
Our manager, he came from the trucking industry. He managed trucks distributing food.
Okay.
And we brought him in. Now he's really upped our.
So you repurpose his skill set from that leadership perspective. He doesn't necessarily come from the trade side of it, but he came from a relatable environment, and you were able to repurpose his leadership skill sets.
Yeah, and now he's also our salesman, and he does really good at it. So he does. Yeah. He makes sure everybody's kind of doing their thing in the shop. But we also have a shop foreman that has pretty good experience, and he's came along really well. And he, I just let these guys loose and let them, be inventive more or less. I just really want everything safe.
Yeah.
My big deal.
Yep.
And we've brought on some younger guys that really didn't know how to weld. And we brought them in, cutting on the bandsaw. And then, hey, if you want to learn how to weld, we'll let you go do some stuff and we teach them how to weld. And that's what my son did when he was, helping.
When he was 4.
Well, when he got to college, he showed his, college buddies how to weld, and now they know how to weld.
Yeah, no, I mean, welding's a life skill. I mean, I'm not a very good welder. I learned how to weld. I mean, I was building delis in front of Home Depots. When I was 21, I went and got a college degree, but didn't really need it, but it was fun. I'll say the least. But yeah, I mean, and I never used a wrench in my life, basically. I mean, I was taught to work at a young age. I was working at 9 in the family business and things like that. But I didn't really get into the hands-on stuff until out of college when we were we opened 25 delis in front of Home Depots leading up to the 2009 crash here. And we had a great lead handy guy, and he would just put me to work, and to the point where I'm soldering copper, running water lines, waste lines, doing electrical work, welding. And so now my wife loves me because anything goes around on the house, I'm I'm good enough to fix most things around the house. And one time I even replaced my own main sewer line. The Roto-Rooter came out and they were like, oh, it's going to be like 15 grand. I'm like, screw that. I rented a backhoe and off we went.
Yeah.
But I think, there's a lot of pride that I have, and I would imagine that your sons probably have, to be able to say, hey, I can do things with my hands, and I think that's, again, maybe we're having a renaissance, or hopefully we're having a renaissance there where, people can say, hey, I can do things with my hands. I can be creative. I can, build and be self-sufficient. And I think that's, again, a story I want to continue to make sure that we're telling the world here. Right?
Yeah. And I'm really big about that. As a matter of fact, younger people that are coming out as high school, and I don't go out there and try to look for them or nothing, but if I come across people who are just, man, I'm just undecided what I want to do. And it's rough for a high schooler to really know what they want to do.
Yeah.
And so I tell them, I said, you don't have to go to college. Mm-hmm. You can go learn a skill. Something I did straight out of high school is I learned how to be an auctioneer.
Oh, that's
and I actually had an auction business. I've worked for some pretty big auctioneers and know some pretty famous auctioneers actually on TV.
Like fine art or cars or what?
I did, just anything and everything. But so what I got involved with was I did a lot of the storage auctions.
Okay.
Locks and so one of the auctioneers on the Storage Wars, I know.
Yeah.
I worked with them at a different auction company here in Colorado. I did that as a hobby.
We're gonna hire you as for our fantasy football league next year.
Right.
We do an auction draft. We need a professional auctioneer.
All right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get hired by auctioneers. I've had the Ritchie Brothers auctions, which they're the biggest
Nice.
auction. They've hired me to set up an auction for them here in Grand Junction.
Wow.
And other auctioneers, heard about me and go, "Hey man, can you help me set the auction up? I need you to row up everything." And
Yeah.
so I did that. So, and I tell people, I said, you can go be in 1 week, you can learn how to be an auctioneer, literally.
That's
You
all
can
it
be an
takes.
auctioneer in 1 week.
Yeah.
If I can do it, anybody can do it. You can be a real estate agent fairly fast.
Yeah.
You can sell real estate. You go to school.
Yeah. You've like a 2-week course and get your license and, off you go.
Yeah. So another one that I did that was kind of off the wall a long time ago, I was on eBay and a limousine popped up for $5,000. I bought it.
Yeah.
And I went back to Ohio and I got it. I come back to Grand Junction with it and I started a limousine service. I ended up having 3 limousines here. And
Mike's limo rides.
I had, so yeah, I'm all about entrepreneurial. My dad was that way. He was education and he went into construction business and ended up buying a cattle ranch. And I grew up on a cattle ranch as we was doing construction work at the same time. And
yeah. I think there's a lot of pride to be had there. And I think there's a lot of other options that people have. And, the demand for folks that are in the trades or, work with their hands and do creative entrepreneurial types of things is so high. And I think it's just, again, it's like a golden age and renaissance opportunity. And I think we can tell that to folks. And I think the other thing I highlight, the fact that you are hiring young people into the business and that you're training and teaching and developing them, I think is a key takeaway for folks because that creates longevity and stickiness. Now, maybe not all of them are going to stick with them. Hopefully you can either let them fly and, be gracious and, that might be the path for some of these young people, but many of them will stay with you forever, right? Because of what you've done, you've developed them. And when you invest back into your people, the longevity, they're learning their professional skill sets growing, but we're growing personally too. Every time we grow, we learn something new and somebody invests in us, there's personal and professional growth, and that creates a sticky environment for your folks. And I think if you also embrace that when it's their time to leave the nest per se, and you do that graciously, or you create a path, or you're forward in those conversations with those people, like, hey, I'm going to bring you in, I'm going to invest in you. If you want to stay here, we're going to make this a great career for you. But if you need to go and spread your wings somewhere else, we're also going to support you on that as well. And I think too many employers are like, oh, they left me. I spent all this money and time with them. That's the wrong mentality because many of those people will come back to you, first of all. And second of all, they'll refer people back into you, or they become your customers or your vendors. And
you're absolutely right.
Partners.
I have a kid right now. He actually, I met him. I went into a place to get my oil changed in my pickup.
Yeah.
The guy changing the oil in my pickup. He ended up coming to work for us.
That's a great place to recruit, by the way, if you're in the trades. Yeah. So sorry, Jiffy Lube.
Right. So then he came on. Now he went out and bought an old pickup and a welder. So he's setting up his old welding rig. And he's like, hey man, I'm going to be quitting. And I said, you can bring that in after hours and get everything fixed up on it, your welding rig, your bed on your truck. And I said, if you get work, I said, you can work here part-time if you want while you get your business started. And I said, we might use you because we might have some welding out in the field and we would use you because we're not set up that way. We'd use you.
And we know you're good. We like you. We know we could trust that you're going to do a good job for our customer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So now you get a markup on that, and then you subcontract out to them, and you have a reliable extension of your business to send out in the field, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you don't want to get mad at things like that. You don't want to burn them bridges at all. You want to build that bridge.
Yeah, that's a great opportunity, not a oh no, I just lost somebody. And short term, you're gonna have to go find someone, you're gonna develop someone new. But you know what? I mean, at the end of the day, it's about creating win-win scenarios for people, right? And if you have a win-win mentality like that, right, that pays everything forward. It's amazing what will happen, right?
Right.
I mean, in that same vein, when I took over this business 13 years ago, I worked for a commercial dish machine company. So I was a professional dishwasher, but I had a really strong relationship with my COO, who is now my coach. He since retired and now is my business coach. He's the guy because we loved each other and I did a great job for him and I liked working for him. But they also became my biggest customer. Mm-hmm. So my relationship with that organization continued and my ability to influence impact in that business continued because of the way we separated, right? We did that in a productive, healthy, supportive way for each other. I mean, I didn't just leave them hanging and they didn't, kick me, show me the door, right? And so that, has, continued to be a long-standing relationship in my life and professionally, and we both continue to add value. And so I think that's, we always want to think about that on the exit side, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, I've helped a lot of, so I started my own construction business when I was 24 years old. I'm 60 now. And through all those years, somebody asked, because I've helped so many people get into business. And so one day I sat down, somebody asked me to sit down and just count how many.
Yeah.
And it was 12.
12 businesses that you've inspired.
Every single one of them, they all became millionaires right after within their business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would imagine you have a lot of relationships that you still maintain. And
I can call on any of them if I want.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were in their 20s, they were getting up there in age too now. They all got kids. I watch their kids all grow up now and it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, hey, Mike, there's some really great stories. I really appreciate you sharing. How can people find you? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, we have beariron.com.
Okay. Beariron.com.
Yep. Beariron.com. Just like how you spell the animal bear. So, yep.
I'll have all that in the show notes so people can check out your website and obviously get in contact with you if they need any sort of kind of custom iron work for any projects or any tools, equipment that they're working on out there. And I really appreciate you being on today.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to our People First Builders podcast. If you're a successful construction CEO and would like to tell your story on this program, please visit our podcast homepage, FletcherWimbush.com/peoplefirstbuilders, or check it out in the notes below. If you got something out of this interview and would like to share the episode on the socials, we always appreciate that. Just take a quick screenshot with your phone, text it to a friend, or post it to the socials. If you know someone who might be a great guest, tag them on social and let them know. And don't forget, #PeopleFirstBuilders. I love seeing your posts and guest suggestions. We're regularly putting out new content. To make sure that you don't miss out on any episodes, go ahead and hit subscribe on your favorite podcast channel. Your thumbs up and ratings and reviews go a long way to help promote the show and mean a lot to me and my team. Want to know more? Go to our website, FletcherWimbush.com, or follow me on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.